You have recently been elected the one of the youngest probably the youngest parliamentarian in the islands of the Bahamas. Um, there've been a lot of feedback. You literally asked the people of the Bahamas to give you a chance. Um, what are you looking for? And this only happened this year. So what are you looking for in terms of your this new election for the islands of the Bahamas?
Well, certainly I'm looking forward to more accountability, better transparency, and more fiscal management. This election, May 10th, proved that the people of the Bahamas are certainly tired of doing business as usual. I'm looking forward to the new initiatives that my government will be rolling out when we talk about implementing term limits for the Prime Minister, when we're talking about making the Attorney General an independent office of the government, those type of legislative implementations. And so, the future prospects for my country and my community is certainly great.
Before we get too deep into that, share with us your path to where you are right now.
Well, certainly, interestingly enough, I started out as a 21-year-old independent candidate of last year. I would have had a team, and certainly we were on the ground campaigning. And coming down to the latter year, end of last year, September of last year, the Free National Movement, as well as some other political parties, would have certainly reached out to me to be their candidate in the general election. We went through a very, rigorous process of interviewing all of the likes, and at the end of the day, I was ratified at 21-year-old on May 27th, October 27, 2016, as the Free National Movement candidate for the Baines and Grandstand constituency in the Bahamas. Um, the journey has certainly not been an easy one. I had a campaign team made up of about 86 persons who canvassed throughout the entire Baines and Grandstand constituency. There are about 10 polling divisions in my constituency, comprising 10,000 people live in my constituency, but there are about 5,000 registered voters who we needed to target and certainly get on the ground. But my campaign was one of a message. It had a theme. Our theme was hashtag youthful solution, providing solutions for all. And so we spoke to the needs of the young, the middle, and certainly the older generation. We launched a number of initiatives in the area that certainly got the people's attention, and at the end of the day, success was our reward.
You listed some lofty goals. One of them stands out to me: term limits within the Caribbean. Uh, do you anticipate any challenges in terms of your party pushing that agenda forward?
No, certainly not. My party would have campaigned on that premise that we will implement term limit for the prime minister, because that is what our country has been crying out for. When you look at about 43 years of independence, our country has only had three prime ministers, and so that was as a result of, because the leader or prime minister can serve for as long as he wants. What that did was that kept our country stagnant because it did not allow for new, fresh, bright, innovative ideas to come forth from other persons who haven't sat around the table but who were on the outside looking in, trying to add a new flavor to what we bring to governance.
But your portfolio is in the area of tourism. Um, tourism numbers are up in the Bahamas. Uh, I would imagine you're suggesting that those numbers should even be higher.
Yes, definitely. I think that this is what we see is what we see is nothing compared to what we should be seeing. I often tell people that tourism in the Bahamas, well, the Bahamas has been one of the only countries in the Caribbean who has been able to survive solely off of tourism as number one industry for about 60 years. So just recently we celebrated, I think, was our 60-year golden jubilee of tourism. And when we look at where we come from to where we are today, and given the amount of millions and millions of dollars we as a country have pumped and invested into our tourism industry, certainly our numbers can even be greater, and that is certainly our mandate going forward into this 2017 and beyond.
Where did most of your support come from in terms of the younger folks, the older folks, females, etc.?
Well, most of the support was from young persons and single parents. And that is because, certainly with the young people, my opponent, the incumbent, Dr. Bernard Nottage, he was 72 years old, representative. And he's been in politics for about 35 years. And he represented Bain and Grandstown for 10 years. 10 years consecutive. Since then, we haven't seen much growth, and the young people in the community felt as though their voice were not being heard and it was not being put to the forefront. The interesting thing about this election in the Bahamas was that about 62 to 65% of the electoral voters were young people ages 18 to 35. So, suffice to say, young people decided who the government of the Bahamas will be in this past May 10th election, and that's certainly what took place.
Being such a young politician in the Bahamas, do you think the younger folks are looking up to you, or will perhaps look up to you, and will get more involved in tourism?
Well, certainly, I know that persons probably not just within the Bahamas, but in the Caribbean and even some young people around the world, and even the older generation, certainly looking forward to great things from me. As I mentioned earlier, I know the challenges that this poses for me as a young politician and as a young person. First of all, to be able to champion the cause for young people and to make sure that their views and voices are heard. This is certainly a very pivotal moment for young people, many of whom, as you mentioned now, are given tourism an even a different eye because they see now the opportunities that can be derived from it. And many persons associate me as a young person to the tourism industry. Like I mentioned, having been served as Junior Minister of Tourism. And so, the future prospects for the Ministry of Tourism in the Bahamas are certainly great.
The Bahama project finally got off the ground. Um, what numbers are you looking at, or do you anticipate the Bahama project will bring to the islands of the Bahamas?
Well, the Bahama project, I would not speak specific to that as yet because there are still some uh, final stages of the project that has to be complete. So until such further time, I won't speak directly to that as yet.
The is Does that compete with the bigger hotel, which is the Atlantis?
Certainly not. They are in two different target markets. The Atlantis Resort is more of a family resort for the kids, the water slide, the theme parks, etc. The Bahama speaks more to a luxury brand, bringing in high-end clients, and so their target market and are totally, I wouldn't say totally, but it's certainly different. And you would see actually in the years ahead, as we sit down this year and the next year, certain collaborations between both hotels will be on the table. Some of the challenges that I personally would have experienced growing up in a home, I certainly had both parents. They were both married. I'm the fifth out of six children, two girls and four boys. And when I think about me growing up in a home with no water, light, cable, phone, and the likes, the finer things or the more luxurious things in life. Those are certainly the challenges, some of the challenges that I faced. Um, Interestingly enough, I would have been considered what many people call an at risk youth, and that's because of my involvement inside, or what you call gang related activities. I have an interesting past. I often tell people the young man that you see speaking to you today, wasn't always as well grown or poised as I present myself to be. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I would have been adopted in my eighth grade year by my homeroom teacher, and that is because in my school work I started to fall off or to get poor grades, as one would put it. Um, I started when I started drifting away from home, just doing my own thing, because of the environment that I was in, the being in Grandstown, which is more or less inner city or what we call the quote unquote ghetto community. And so the pressures were great for me when I had my parents who, wanted to pressure me to give in to smoking or drinking or, getting in fights, etc. The challenges were all there. And I remember once when I did get into a physical altercation in one of my junior high schools, it was certainly because of the intervention of, as I mentioned, my adopted mother, that I was able to turn my life around and to get back on track to having a decent and successful future. As I always tell young people or anyone who asks, don't wait on the right moment. Take this moment and make it the right moment. And that is because we often feel as young people that we don't have the education enough, we're not experienced enough, or we don't boast the financial resources enough to be able to venture into entrepreneurship or to do what I have done, to go into politics and take on incumbent giants, etc. And my push to them is certainly follow your dreams. You know, now is the best time to pursue the dream. Don't wait for it. The longer you take to pursue your dream, the shorter you will fall to actually accomplishing it. Because at this young age, in my life, should I not have been successful, the next 5 years, I could have gone after it again because I have the lifespan enough to do that. But if I did this when I was 65 years old and I lost out, certainly at age 70, the opportunities would have been even less than they were when I started out. And so, the younger you are pursuing your dream, the more time enough you have to accomplish it and to correct any failures that you may have had in pursuit of it.
What does the future look like for Travis Robinson? Do you plan on remaining in tourism? And if not, what are the areas that you're looking at?
Well, tourism is certainly not my final destination. It is a transition for me. Well, I shouldn't say that because I'm going into my private life after I've completed the government or the public life, and my I wouldn't speak to it, but I have some plans in the working that will come forth very soon. But it still will be in the tourism industry because tourism industry is just so diverse that now we see everything that we do now is either indirectly or directly linked to the tourism industry. But where I'm headed to in the years ahead is certainly directly linked to the tourism industry.
Well, when that time comes, I'm certain the tourism industry will miss you.
Yeah. Well, we only time will tell.
Thank you.